Get that? H.M. Mahari here. In that little period, where I'm live, but it doesn't look like it. Here, borderline personality disorder and control splitting drama and chaos. What to do? There's so much about, when people are thinking that their changes are going to create changes in a person with BPD, I can understand where people might be in that place because they're so in cognitive dissonance. They so want the relationship to work out. All this is really understandable. But if you happen to be with somebody with BPD, or you have any relationship type, a family member, an adult child, a parent, it's really important to kind of get the basics of the toxic nature of the impossibility of relating with them, to them, when they don't go and get any help and when they don't have any treatments. Hey there, Adam. My wife devalued me for 4 months, now loves me again, and is diagnosed and in therapy. She wants another baby now. Wow, that sounds like a lot real quick. Because I don't know, how long has she been in therapy? How long have you been back together? Yeah, I would think maybe before there's another child involved, it would be a good idea to see how she's doing in therapy. Like, people really have to separate out where a BPD loved one is or not in terms of therapy, etc. And with the splitting, with the control struggles, with the chaos and the drama, no matter how much you work on yourself, okay, so if somebody's in treatment for BPD, okay, so that changes it a bit, like as long as they're making progress, and that has to be seen over time. But this idea that other people can affect how the person with BPD will be by working on themselves. People should work on themselves, absolutely. But this idea that you can somehow, then they're just going to reciprocate because with the control struggle battles that go back and forth and that kind of dynamic, which, again, just to reiterate from a previous video I did and also the comments, I just kind of was a little, not that I don't believe it, I do hear it from clients in a different way, but this notion that it would be a really painful place to be, that the more you work on yourself, why is it, why is somebody still so married to the control dynamic? Because, like I said in that other video, which I won't reiterate here, people can only control themselves. You can't control the other person, no matter how much you'd like to, like not even in a really trying to help them way, right? Which often becomes rescuing. I'm gonna put the glasses on and spare my neck to stretch. Oh, I forgot to clean them. Ha! Dave, wow, this topic looks like a good one. Yeah, well, I hope I could do it some justice, and depending what other people's experiences are and what people have to share or what people are working through or any questions. Not necessarily, I'm not saying to you, Adam, I don't know, your partner could be very much about to get, on the road to recovery, work really hard in therapy. I don't know. But when they're self-aware and they have awareness, yes, that's a big step. That's really important. But that alone doesn't mean that they'll stay in the action of engaging the treatment. So that's still something that is good that she's going to therapy. But then you have to kind of wait and see, how is that going to play out? Is it going to, is she going to really avail herself of the help and take action on the self-awareness, which, by the way, it's very, very painful. So there's a reason why a lot of people with BPD, quit. They'll go so long and then they quit. And then maybe they go back and they quit. A lot of people won't even go. And some people, of course, go. You have to be like a dog with a bone or more. You have to, and she has to want this recovery for herself. So the first red flag that I think, Adam, is potential in your situation is that now that everything's kind of back to where it was and she's in therapy, okay, good, and she's self-aware, that's another positive. But now she wants to have another baby? It's like, wait a minute. I don't know how you feel about that, but that just sounds like a lot without giving her time to, be in therapy for the right reasons, which is for herself first and her own growth and recovery first. But whether a person has quiet BPD or the acting out, so the internalizing or the acting out, it doesn't mean it's necessarily BPD light. It just depends. I mean, I don't think there is such a thing as BPD light, but then not everybody with BPD is going to have the same amount of everything to the nines, because there's individual variations in there. Hi there, Lance. Dave said, I'm pretty sure my friend with BPD loves the pity, sympathy, attention she's getting after a very public drama incident. She could have stopped the drama months ago, but she keeps it going. Well, yeah, and I think, there's an element to drama addiction in BPD because of, like where that comes from in childhood, and what either, in a family might have been chaotic and dramatic, or lots of drama and chaos, or what might have certainly for somebody who goes on to be diagnosed with BPD, what might have felt very much like they had to be pretty drama-filled or almost histrionic to get attention. And remember, for kids, it's different than when somebody's older, even though they need to emotionally mature, people with BPD, through therapy, etc. Remember that for kids, it's about, being seen is also, younger age, is a survival need too. Kids mount the cry, literally, of infancy for attention and for needs, and so do young children. So when that emotional arrested development happens, then unfortunately what happens is they're going to still be very much in that sort of like, it can be pity, sympathy, attention seeking and needing, and creating, like you're describing, Dave, in all kinds of different ways, public drama or public drama incidents. Yeah, they keep the drama going. It's repetition compulsion. I'm not trying to give any excuses for it, but they often aren't exactly always sure of why they're doing it. So it becomes this repetition compulsion. It's just they don't know what else to do sometimes, which is like, I know that sounds lame to say, because they're still responsible for what they do. Boredom can equate to loneliness, can equate to, hey, like, they don't know this consciously, but to like needing drama, needing chaos, needing attention, because when things seem like they're boring, they are therefore then empty. People with BPD don't do so well with that kind of feeling, because then they'll generate the chaos and drama because they feel abandoned by bored. Let me put it that way. Like, I work with a lot of people just coming out of these relationships, right, that there's so much to work out. The cognitive dissonance, so much pain. How did you get there in the first place? Not that it's your fault, but how do you not get there? But like, just like the grief of the loss of the relationship, the grief of the loss of all that you hoped for a relationship. I mean, there's all that and then more because of the dynamics and what happens to people often, with people with BPD, because they unfortunately have been, traumatized themselves, but it's not an excuse for abuse or anything. It's very, very, very painful and traumatic for many, many people. And they really aren't cognizant of how their behavior fully affects the other party. Well, that's very true, and in a lot of people's case with BPD, they not only are they not cognizant of it, how it fully affects, they don't really. Sometimes they just don't have a clue, because they just. I've often just said, in the context of what I know and believe BPD to be so much more than what psychiatry describes it. It's a relational disorder. I mean, but many, harder eyes, cold eyes versus maybe warmer eyes, or more sort of a sad child's look here and there, because with every emotional state they're in defines who they are, because in the absence of, there's no definition for who they are. Trying to make them get help. There's a trap right there. It's not up to you to get them out of those episodes, and when you keep putting up with those episodes, at some point you have to ask yourself, kind of like, why? Because what's in it that's healthy for you? Could my own traits have triggered the ex? Here I am once again, it's okay, trying to hold more responsibility and not letting the ex own her own, quote, borderline and NPD, unquote, contribution to the relationship ending. I don't really know the answer to the question. I would think probably not, but I don't know what your traits are that you think might have triggered your ex. So, but remember that anybody who gets triggered by anything has to take personal responsibility for why they're being triggered. So, which is hard to do if a person doesn't know why that's happening. I do think you are really overreaching to try to hold more responsibility, and that might be not a conscious attempt at control, but if you try to control that narrative a bit more, it might be offsetting what might be more painful to realize. It just doesn't seem to me that you really were the one that, she's responsible. If she got triggered by something, then she's responsible for that. And if you have some issues that could have triggered her, fair enough, but she was, affecting you negatively. And if you're owning whatever, you feel your issues are, you can't blame your issues on whatever she did. Eric, AJ, I'm just realizing you create a safe place with these live chats for people affected by BPD, including those with BPD. That's amazing. Well, thank you, Eric. I mean, yes, definitely, because I think most people who follow me or watch my videos or come to live streams would know that nobody gets to beat up anybody with BPD around here, because I'm here for both and I will protect one way or the other, right? So it hasn't come to that ever, but if somebody from one side got to being abusive to somebody on the other side, either way, I would, bop them out for now. And if it happened multiple times, that would be different. But I really appreciate that people are very respectful here. And I think that that's really important, because everybody loses in these relationships. Everybody hurts. Everybody's traumatized. I'm not saying to the same degree, but on both sides. And maybe some people don't care about the other side, and that's fine. But I find that a lot of people that come to the streams, probably with people who have BPD or traits, and they're discussing that, they often end up asking them questions, and they learn and gain from them too. So yeah, I absolutely wouldn't have it any other way, and I just feel really blessed that people have, I guess, enough feel for the channel or myself or whatever the case may be to know that, I'm here for both sides, and so there has to be some commingling with regard to that. I think it's helpful for people. Borderline traits, we all have one or more at any given point in our lives. No, where'd you hear that? What's that mean? And then you said, when we are dumped, we recoil, we fear abandonment. To me, it's about dialectical relationships between internal and external. Maybe what I would challenge you on there, Dave, with respect, is we don't all have borderline traits at all. The reality is that borderline personality disorder, because of the geniuses in the pseudoscience of psychiatry over the years and decades, right? They took human traits and then they just put these qualifiers on them, like when they're extreme, when they interfere with people's lives. That's how arbitrary this whole freaking thing is built on. So, no, we all have the human traits, if you can hear what I'm saying. I don't want to argue with you, but I hope you can hear what I'm saying. We all have the human traits, but that doesn't make us all, they're not borderline. You know what I'm saying? Like, depends. You could have, it's such bad language. But technically, under the way they've done this, yes, you could have a borderline trait or two, but they're human traits first, and then they're pathologized second. So we definitely all don't have borderline traits. We all have the same human traits. And then it's to what degree do we have them? And you're right about, recoiling and fear, or recoiling and after being dumped, and fear, and there's pain and woundedness there. So, which isn't necessarily pathological. It's very human, amongst the human traits and the way that people are abused and hurt, shocked, dumped, discarded, etc. Dave, it really did make sense, AJ. That is why I keep coming back. The only thing I regret about drinking 40 years to kill the manufactured and real pain, not being in a locked room. Well, and that's a regret, but you have to really realize just how far you've come and how courageous that journey you've taken to be sober and not be drinking like you were, and that, hey, a lot of people end up doing that. It's not like they choose it because they think that's going to be great, because there's so much pain. you know. So I hope that you can be kind to yourself. And you know, it's hard to work through things that we have from the past, like, but you're on a journey, and you know, you're very courageous, and you deserve a break. So to not be too hard on yourself, not trying to overreach for more responsibility than what is yours, and taking responsibility for what is yours, and starting to be really kind to yourself about that, you know, because you're doing the best you can, and when you know better, you do better. And hey, man, you're on the road to knowing better and doing better. And Lance, I used to be naive and overlook bad behavior and try to forgive it. Now I've learned boundaries and strengthening them and forgiving myself. Good for you, Lance. Right on. That's exactly what many people need to learn. Again, because yes, it's a city ablaze with God knows what they're doing out there. It's going to be another one or two following in a minute. And then there's like a big intersection over there, so they have to put the sirens on to get through. Yes, boundaries are so important, and I was going to say, and so many people don't get to learn them in childhood for so many various different reasons, right? So that's a really tough fact in a lot of people's lives. And so I think too that, you know, the really important thing for everyone to remember, wherever you are, whether it's the person's in your past now or barely, or you're still with them and you don't know what to do, that the control struggles, it's really important to find a way to detach. A way, even, you know, you might have your own, like codependents, they have their own issues, other people, they have their own issues. People get really reactive to some people with BPD who are really, you know, unaware of how they're behaving, what they're doing, etc. So it's really important to disengage the control struggles, because trying to be like that poor commenter I'm not trying to pick on said, thinking that there's supposed to be 50-50 control in a relationship. Well, people, the most valuable takeaway for somebody with BPD, maybe watching this later, or for anybody who's been with somebody with BPD, is that it's not about, love is not about control. Relationships are toxic if there's control struggles going on, and obviously splitting, and drama and chaos. And it's not always just one person that's some of the drama or the chaos. There's reactivity, etc. But the main thing about that is that it's look in the mirror, it's look to yourself, it's gain self-awareness, it's take care of self. Can't rescue and change other people, but you can, and people with BPD too. You can get help, and you can change yourself and work on the changes you need to make, as well as people who've been hurt and traumatized on the other side of people with BPD or other, you know, NPD or other kinds of, quote, personality disorders too, because it's really important to know that it is all about how much you know yourself, what you went through in your own childhood, and I'm speaking for people who don't have BPD, to people who don't have BPD, and it's really about the growth. We all need more growth, you know. Rare is the person that comes out of childhood kind of just groovy, you know what I mean? Well, and they need some growth of a different variety maybe, but we all are continuing to grow. I don't think I'm finished growing. I'm always learning new things. And the point is, so, you know, radical acceptance, learning to forgive yourself, taking responsibility, and people who've been in relationship to people with BPD in any type of relationship, or are still in a relationship, or still have somebody with BPD in their lives, need to really focus on self-control of emotions, building up your emotional intelligence to cope and regulate your own emotions effectively, and know that boundary, which is hard for people to find, right? But know and define the boundary of where you end and they begin, because that's where your responsibility ends and their maybe abdicated responsibility, but still personal responsibility nonetheless, begins. So try not to be overreaching. And of course, many people will have overreached and you know, etc. But now people are waking up, and some people are going to come to this one day brand new and just trying to figure it all out. So, and Lance, true boundaries are not, quote, rules, unquote. Lots of people confuse. Well, yeah, and the other thing that I'm always, when I talk about boundaries, it's really important to think about is that boundaries, when you're with somebody with BPD, or maybe you have a parent or an adult child, or it's a different type of relationship too, it's not like stating your boundaries to them is going to matter. It just often doesn't. But defining them for yourself in your own journey, recovery journey, healing journey, maybe healing from codependency, whatever, where everybody is in their own journeys, it's really important to know that boundaries first need to be identified for you, and then when you identify them and you separate, yourself out from the other person, and no rescuing, no more fixing, take care of yourself. The boundaries are often things that we, identify, and then we take action on, and we can't necessarily always stand around and try to explain them. Sometimes you might try once or twice, but it's not about rules. It's about each person gets to define what their boundaries are. And I know when I think about my boundaries, like, what am I willing to accept and what am I not willing to accept from somebody? And that's some pretty, sometimes boundaries have to be high. We don't know somebody well, getting to know somebody and they're showing us something, like I have recently a couple times, don't like, this isn't good, this is a no-go, too many red flags here. That's for each person to decide, so it's not about trying to give other people rules on how to behave, right? Because for people that are just in an averagely mentally healthy place, this doesn't have to come up. And then, of course, if we've known somebody for a long time, like I've got lots of friends I've been close to for years, and so the boundaries, there's boundaries there still, but they're not rigid or high boundaries, right? But I think after these experiences, people need to have their boundaries kind of, as they develop them, they have to be a little bit higher, a little more rigid at first, till you learn to trust them. And the other thing I would say, kind of in summary here, is that, again, boundaries are often things that people have to take new action on and keep reinforcing for themselves. It's not about trying to tell someone else, hey, don't do this to me, don't say that to me. Don't be concerned with having the last word. Let go of the need to right bite, because by God, is that a trap and a hook. It's so important to know yourself, because the more you know yourself, it is the best protection against ever letting one of these people get too close again. I think we need to listen to that gut instinct. So anyway, and then Lance said, don't tell a reckless driver how bad they're driving. Yes, just don't get in the car with them. Very true. Because that's a great example, Lance. Great way to put it. Because should we get in the car with the reckless driver, for whatever reason they're reckless, because we're worried about they're going to get hurt and we want to try to help them? Look at the high risk we'd be putting. No, we need to just go, well, we don't need to tell them that they're a risky driver or what they're doing probably incorrectly or what the situation is. We just need to step back and go, going to take care of myself. But it's a great analogy for, you see somebody who isn't aware of what they're doing, they might be going to fall off a cliff, metaphorically speaking, but we can't rescue them, We can call 911 if we see something, if we know something. We could try to get other people to help them, but we have to take care of ourselves. And knowing yourself really wholly and being comfortable in your own skin, and when I say that about myself, doesn't mean I think I'm perfect. We need to just allow ourselves to be who we are, because the best elixir and protection against cluster Bs is knowing yourself. See, once we abandon the present moment, we abandon our choices. Yes, and can I just add to that, when you abandon the present moment and your growing journey to know yourself better, or wherever people are on that journey, you are abandoning yourself time and time again, as people with BPD will do, as people with codependency will do, as people with just adverse childhood experiences and really pain left over from childhood will do. And then Lisa said they can be right, and more importantly, they can go away. Well, exactly. Let them have their friggin' last word of whatever it is, because it's about surrendering control in the battle of the control dynamic and the chaos and the drama, to be able to unstep the chaos and the drama and often the relationship, and then get on a healing and recovery journey. Remember, if you have BPD, you can recover. And if you've been with somebody with BPD, you need your own recovery, and you need to know yourself better, and you need your boundaries, and you need to take care of you, So disengage any control struggles, disengage chaos, drama, etc. Get neutral, start working on your own emotional reactivity, and disengage the drama and the chaos, etc., so that you can come back to some solid thinking for yourself that isn't just driven by emotion. You can make those choices necessary and forge your way forward to recovery. Take care, everybody.